our nervous system. It's getting more signals in the first 30 minutes of the day when you wake up and look at your phone than it was getting in a week of being alive in the 1950s. Gen Z is the first sign that we have seen as a real objective empirical sign that we are a society in regression. Trauma passes down through the epigenetic code for 3 or more generations. In animals, we've seen it pass down for up to 14 generations.
Dang. Okay, guys, we got Dr. Dave Rabin here from Apollo. We're at Asprey's conference. He already spoke twice. Just tried out the Apollo. And what's new with you, man?
Just enjoying myself, connecting with old friends. We have a 1-year-old at home now, so
Congrats.
I'm not getting out to as many conferences as I used to.
That makes sense.
So it's really nice to get back here. And I'm also launching my first book, which is really exciting.
Yeah, we got it showed right here.
10 years in the making of
10 years.
Career of work in studying chronic stress and psychedelic assisted therapy and the mechanisms of how we make meaning in the world.
Nice. We'll link that. Is it on Amazon?
It
when
will
comes
be on
out?
June
Cool.
16th. This is the first in-print pre-sale that's happening this week.
Perfect.
So available on June 16th, and we have the first versions here.
Nice. Yeah, we'll include a link to that. You also got a collab with Quicksilver.
Yep.
What's that about?
So most people don't realize that when the body's learning anything new or taking in any nutrients, that it needs to be in a state that's receptive to what we're putting into it. Mm-hmm. So when you're digesting your food, we want the body to start salivating and secreting digestive juices and getting ready to absorb whatever we're putting in. Same with supplements. Mm-hmm. And most people don't realize that. Dr. Chris Shade from Quicksilver definitely gets the biology of this, which is why I respect him so much. And so we've been talking for the last couple of years about creating technology protocols that prepare the body to receive supplements you put into it, because people spend a lot of money on supplements. Yeah. And the whole goal of supplements when we take them is that as much of the supplement is bioavailable, right, meaning available to our bodies to use when we take it. For that to happen, it has to absorb through our mouth and through our digestive lining of our gut. Mm-hmm. And if we're in a stress state, our gut actually resists absorption because it's deprioritizing blood flow to the gut and to the absorption tracts. And so most people don't realize that they're, peeing and shitting out most of their supplements of the time because they're stressed when they're taking them. And all you have to do is, throw Apollo vibes on your iPhone now or on your wearable, and within 15 minutes, your body's ready to receive your food or supplements you're putting in, and your vagus nerve is activated, which increases resources to your digestive tract, and then increases the absorption of whatever you put in dramatically.
That's insane. I never connected the dots on stress and supplement absorption because I've had low vitamin D my whole life, and I keep upping the dose, but it's not going up, my vitamin D levels.
Yeah.
So I'm at like 10,000 IU right now, and it's still low. Yeah. So it might be a stress thing, right?
It can be part of it.
Because I'm pretty stressed. So.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, most people are these days.
Yeah. Who's not, right?
And we often don't realize it. And part of what my book is about is just about how our interaction with technology like smartphones is actually stimulating our stress response a lot more than we think it is, because we don't realize how impactful the blue light is, and the constant scrolling and the constant bombardment of information overwhelms our stress response system. So even if consciously we say, I should be feeling okay, I have no reason to be stressed out, our nervous system is still responding from a place of stress.
For sure.
It's getting more signals in the first 30 minutes of the day when you wake up and look at your phone than it was getting in a week of being alive in the 1950s.
Jeez.
Right? So think about that.
That's
We're just
crazy.
constantly overstimulated. And overstimulation is also a trigger to the stress response system. So doing anything we can to kind of ready the body, that's a productive state. It's a producing, focused state of the body. It's energy out. It's yang in the yin-yang metaphor. So when we talk about recovery, healing, and absorption, it's less about forcing those things to happen and more about getting the body prepared into a state to receive, which is the opposite of producing.
Got it.
So that's yin. And so that's why we talk about this constant balance. Burnout comes from too much production, too much yang all the time, and not enough yin receiving recovery. And those have to be in balance or we burn out.
That makes sense. Yeah, phones aren't going away, so you got to be preventative but also recover too, right?
Exactly. Yeah, we have to prioritize now our recovery time as much as we prioritize work, which means for many people putting it on the schedule, and that's hard.
Yeah.
And really cutting out time that is set aside specifically for what I would describe what's happening in our nervous system is like vagus nerve boosting activities. So it's like anything soothing, anything relaxing, anything that makes you feel good, feel joy, feel the opportunity to play, let your inner child out, right? All of those kinds of things, getting good night's sleep, winding down at night before sleep, like making sure that those recovery routines are more strongly intact and prioritized is even more important because the demand on us for producing during the day is so much higher than it ever was before.
I got to work on that because I stopped wearing my Oura ring actually because it kept saying I was stressed like 6 to 8 hours a day. It was giving me more stress thinking about it. But I need to spend more time recovering for sure.
So one of the things that's most interesting about stress trackers is exactly what you said, which is that so many people, usually 50% of people within the first 6 to 12 months after they have learned that they're stressed out from the devices or they're not sleeping well from the devices, take the devices and throw them in a drawer because they're like, I already know this. So I don't want to keep tracking and having my device remind me of how stressed out I am. My patients with PTSD and depression were experiencing the same thing, and trackers are supposed to help. So I was very interested in this and seeing that it wasn't leading to the behavior change that we thought and hoped it would lead to. And so when we built Apollo, which you tried earlier, that I'm wearing the wearable that delivers vibration to the body that increases vagus nerve activity using sound waves, we wanted to tie that in with the data that's coming in, because if we can understand, for instance, from your Oura ring, what the state of your body is, then instead of you having to interpret the data and make behavior change, we can actually interpret that data for you using AI in the background, and then process the data and then curate Apollo vibes that we send to your body automatically to boost your heart rate variability, your readiness, your energy, rather than saying, oh, you're stressed out, do something about it. We can say, you're stressed out, you don't have to do anything. We're going to take that signal and send you vibes that calm you down. And that's actually how Apollo works. And so we're the first wearable technology that is fully closed loop, which means we intake data from the Apollo itself and from Oura Ring. And we actually make use of that data automatically using AI. And we just published a study that trained that AI that we've been working on since 2020, which is one of the world's largest interventional sleep studies ever done. And it was enabled by both COVID that shut down all the sleep labs and then forced us to go to work with wearables for this study. So we worked with Oura because they were really excited about doing this kind of sleep research. And so we studied 950 people for 3 years between roughly 2020 and 2023. And the study just came out 2 weeks ago, so it's very exciting. And we found out that if you wear Apollo to bed, gently increasing your vagus nerve, which you can also get the same benefits from slow, deep breathing for 5 minutes or 10 minutes before bed, or soothing music and soothing ambiance. But using Apollo for as little as 3 hours a night, just wearing it, putting it on, not doing anything, increases your total sleep time by on average 46 minutes.
Wow.
Per night.
That's a lot.
In as little as one night, it's not just a lot. That's comparable to Ambien.
Really?
Ambien is 30 to 60 minutes of sleep gain.
Wow.
And it impairs deep and REM sleep. And it has side effects. And Apollo increases total sleep time equivalent to Ambien. It also increases REM sleep, which increases your ability to remember what you've learned the day before. It increases your body's emotional, mental recovery and memory organization, because that's what happens during REM. And that's why REM and deep sleep are so important. When we take sedatives and hypnotics like benzos, opiates, Ambien, sleep drugs like that, they actually impair our brain's ability to enter the much deeper, more restorative sleep stages that are critical for us to actually feel good during the day.
Right.
So one of the most common misconceptions around sleep is that you're supposed to get 8 to 9 hours a night. That actually doesn't matter that much. What matters is that if you, whatever hours of sleep you get, that you're getting a high percentage of deep and REM sleep, because that's where all the restoration happens, the majority of it. And so using technology and helping boost activity of the recovery system by helping wind people down before bed, people are able to enter deep and REM sleep stages more easily and stay there longer. And so your percentage of total sleep that is REM and deep restorative sleep goes up, and also you boost your sleep time significantly. And so people just feel so much more rested during the day, which means less reliance on coffee and stimulants, less reliance on alcohol and sedatives at night. And people are just functioning closer to their peak during the day because they're more recovered.
Yeah. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you truly relaxed? Not scrolling, not sleeping with your phone in your hand. I mean real mental recovery. That's why I've been using BrainTap. It combines guided visualization, immersive sound, and light-based brainwave entertainment technology to help your mind shift from stress mode to a more balanced state. Research in the BrainTap literature review highlights growing evidence of brainwave entertainment and relaxation-focused outcomes. I use it to reset, refocus, or unwind after long days. Thousands of sessions are available for sleep, stress, support, focus, and mental fitness. If your brain feels overloaded, maybe it's time to train it rather than push through. Check out trybraintap.com and experience it for yourself.
Just by being a little calmer.
You got me sold. I'm definitely gonna get one. Plus, you could bring it on the go. I travel a lot, so I like that too. Yeah, because I always struggle sleeping when I'm out in hotels and stuff.
It's great for sleeping at planes, great for sleeping on hotels.
You can sleep on a plane? That's impressive.
Yeah, and you can set it to regulate your time zone in travel with and prevent jet lag, because sometimes you need to stay awake on the plane or stay awake longer, right, to be able to adjust to a new time zone. And sometimes you need to sleep at different times to adjust to a new time zone. But if you're not tired, or you're tired when you should be awake to adjust, then your whole circadian sleep cycles get thrown off with the new time zone you're going to. And so Apollo can help you get extra sleep on the plane or stay awake longer without having to take drugs, so that you can actually adjust to the new time zone more easily without so much jarring.
Yeah, I'll need that when I go to London.
Yeah, it's been a game changer for travel for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, the 8 hours of sleep, it's been drilled into everyone's heads. But I was talking to Naveen Jain yesterday. He sleeps 5 hours a day, but he's getting 90 minutes of REM and 90 minutes of deep.
Right.
So it's enough, right?
Generally speaking, yeah. I mean, we usually think of trying to get at least 6 hours a night, but I think in the cases where people are getting a substantial amount of deep and REM in that way, like 90 minutes of each, that's pretty good. Yeah. You know, I've seen Naveen. He's usually feeling pretty good.
He looks good for his age.
Pretty good. Yeah. I mean, I think that's more important. If you have to prioritize one thing, it's how much deep and REM sleep you're getting. Total sleep time is less important.
Yeah, I got to look at my 8 sleep analytics and see what I'm hitting. That's important, right? Those two numbers, and then HRV you mentioned earlier.
Yep.
You said this helps with HRV too, which is interesting, because I bought a whole bike just to try to improve my HRV.
Yeah. Well, so HRV is such an interesting biomarker right now, and it's easily one of the most important biomarkers of mental and overall physical health and performance that we have, because studies have shown in the last 10 years that if you have a higher heart rate variability, which is the rate of change of your heartbeat over time, that you're more adaptable. So effectively, high heart rate variability means when stress comes, your heartbeat goes up quickly. You adapt to it, you meet the stress head on, and then the stress is gone, and then your heartbeat comes down quickly. You adjust back to recovery quickly. So you're able to switch dynamically, very smoothly up and down to the environment. And when you have a low heart rate variability, that is an indicator that we are not well recovered. So our bodies struggle to switch on, and then when we switch on, it's hard to turn off. And so that's what we see in PTSD and depression very commonly in people with chronic stress. HRV is really a biomarker for vagus nerve activity. So when we talk about like the soothing sensations I was mentioning earlier, like Apollo, like soothing touch, like slow deep breathing, that increase vagus nerve activity reliably. When you increase vagus nerve activity, you slow the heartbeat, and when you slow the heartbeat, HRV goes up.
Got it.
And so as you're increasing vagus nerve activity, your body's recovery is increasing. That's measured as heart rate variability.
Okay.
Heart rate variability is not causal. It just helps to predict when you have high vagus nerve activity, you're more likely to be more recovered, which means that all the benefits of recovery you can then predict. So people are more likely to achieve peak performance regularly and consistently. You're less likely to get sick. You're more likely to recover from being sick, and you're more likely to have higher longevity and health span, live a long, healthy life, which is what we all want, right? So now we actually have a biomarker for that. And when HRV is low, we know that people have an increased likelihood of getting sick when they're pushed into stress. They have a worse rate of dealing with stress consistently and performing at peak consistently. They're more likely to make mistakes, and they're less they recover from illness less quickly, right? They live less long. So this is a really exciting time for our field, and especially something that the athletic and elite athletic and military world have brought into research that biohacking has jumped on, which is that HRV can predict a lot of these things that people are taking blood samples and these very invasive tests to study. We can look at HRV and get almost everything we need.
Wow.
Which is amazing.
Love that.
To predict where somebody's at in their health and recovery. So, and it's all based on vagus nerve activity, and we can adjust it by soothing and calming the body. So Apollo was a really incredible discovery from the University of Pittsburgh research we were doing, because at that time when we launched it in 2020 and we discovered it in 2016, nobody had ever successfully created a technology that increases heart rate variability and vagus nerve activity with zero effort. Normally you have to slow, deep breathe for 5 minutes, or you have to get a hug or hug yourself or do some kind of like yoga or soothing experience, or put a vagus nerve stimulator on you that you have to hold to yourself, right? And that takes effort and time. And most people won't do it. Even though it's helpful, people won't do it. So my patients wouldn't do it. So we just thought, well, what if we just use technology to automate this process for people? They can just strap something on and wear it. Would they do it? And they did. And so that ultimately became Apollo. And it's the very first technology in history to passively augment HRV.
Brilliant.
Which is really exciting. So it just helps us be more recovered more of the time, which who couldn't use that?
Yeah,
right?
all of us. Yeah, because some people, I noticed that growing up, some people would get the same sickness, the same cold, but the other dude would be better the next day, and then some guy would take a week.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, so I always wondered what that was.
The biggest factor is vagus nerve activity, and we can train that. So that's what's really exciting, is that the nervous system is highly trainable. And that was discovered over the last 100 years, but in particular, Eric Kandel's Nobel Prize winning work in 2000 is one of the most famous neuropsychiatrists in history. He discovered that the nervous system is highly trainable around fear and safety states, and that fear and safety are our most meaningful inputs to not just us, but all mammals and likely all reptiles going back hundreds of millions of years. So when we understand that that is how we evolved and how our, like whatever else we think is on the top of our fancy human nervous system is working, that's at the core. And if we don't address that first, then our bodies, if they stay in a fear state, are not allowing recovery to even happen, because if we're in a fear state, our bodies are believing that there's like a saber-toothed tiger around the corner.
Right.
And we're not supposed to be, we didn't evolve to send resources to reproduction, digestion, immunity, and sleep and rest, and empathy and creativity. When our bodies think there's a saber-toothed tiger around the corner, we default to fight or flight, which means all our blood flow is going to skeletal muscles. So there's almost no blood flow left over for recovery.
Wow.
So by just doing the deep breathing, by doing the soothing touch, by throwing on your favorite songs more often, by using Apollo, you're increasing the safety signals to the body through the skin, through the ears, through your senses. And then that reminds the body effectively that it's safe enough to allocate resources to recovery. Then healing just starts to happen. So you're just unblocking a natural pathway rather than saying, I'm going to force this healing process to happen. It's a totally different mindset around healing, which is really how Eastern and tribal traditions have done it for thousands of years. And they have a much better track record at treating chronic mental illness than we do in Western
100%.
culture.
Wow. What percentage of people in your experience are living in a fear state, you'd say?
I mean, pre-smartphones, it might have been like 70 to 80%.
Oh, that high?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Post-smartphones, it's probably closer to all of us.
Wow.
Because there's so much incoming stimulation. Like, think about what you were probably talking about with Chris Shade recently, right?
Yeah.
The idea that mental illness has skyrocketed in the last 10 to 15 years is not by chance. It's a factor of having a supercomputer in your pocket that never disconnects you from stimulation to the environment. You're never totally disconnected from work or other people anymore.
Today's episode is sponsored by Quicksilver Scientific, and these guys are genuinely in a category of their own. 38 patents, over 40,000 practitioners worldwide prescribing their protocols, sold out Erewhon. They're the company everyone else in the supplement industry is trying to copy. What they cracked is delivery. Most supplements you take, your body absorbs maybe a fraction of what's on the label. Quicksilver's nano-liposomal technology is specifically engineered so what you take actually gets into your system fast. Glutathione, NAD+, peptides, stuff that used to require big pills or injections, now in a sublingual pump that takes seconds to work. If your functional doctor hasn't already recommended them, they probably will soon. Go to quicksilverscientific.com, use code DSH to save on your order.
You're never totally disconnected from the news, right? We used to just know what was going on in ourselves, in our family, and our immediate friend group, and our neighborhood community. Right? Now we're aware of all of that and what's happening everywhere in the world at all times. That's a lot of information for us. That doesn't even count the blue light you get from your phones, right? That doesn't count that's like, as I mentioned earlier, we're getting as many social signals in the first half hour of waking up from looking at your phone in that first half hour as we would used to get in a week of being alive in the 1950s. So you multiply that times how many half hours the average 20 to 45-year-old individual is spending on their phones every single day. Now you're talking tens of times more input than somebody was getting in a week of being alive in the 1950s. It's too much. Our bodies did not evolve to receive that much incoming information. So that's tricking our nervous system into thinking, wow, this is a lot. Like the fear center, the amygdala in our brains responds to too much, too loud, too fast, and too much newness, not just survival threat. Survival threat is what it evolved to respond to, but it gets triggered by too much, too loud, too fast, just the same. It doesn't know the difference.
Yeah.
So we have to train our minds to, and this is what Jim Quick talks about and many of the other speakers here, how do you train your mind to remember how to filter out the incoming information with mindfulness, focus techniques, meditation, breathing? All of those techniques start to help us filter and create the structure in the brain that actually filters out incoming useless information so that we're not constantly overwhelmed. And if we haven't trained in those techniques, we're just constantly overwhelmed all the time, and our nervous system shows it as decreased heart rate variability.
For sure.
Decreased vagus nerve activity, feeling like crap all the time, burnout, right? So the good news is all of this is avoidable. We just need to update our understanding of how the nervous system works.
Absolutely. Do you think the bodies are going to adapt to all this? Because now you're seeing all this autism, this ADHD. Do you think like the newer generations are adapting to this change in the technology, I guess?
I think the newer generations are our biggest example of what we've done wrong and what we need to fix. So I don't know if have you seen the testimony, the congressional testimony of that psychologist from Harvard who talked about how Gen Z is the first generation in history that has been found to score lower on standardized tests of cognition and learning and math than the previous generation.
I didn't see that, but I'm not surprised actually.
So this is really important to talk about because we have been on a pattern in human society in terms of even as many flaws as people find with our education system up until Gen Z. We were on a consistent pattern of continuing to improve the cognitive abilities of humans every single generation. This means math skills, language skills, reasoning skills, right? Some of the core skills that are required for thinking and existing as a functional human being. These skills are arguably some of the most important skills taught in school. And so schools were designed to teach these skills. And so over every generation, we've seen a continuous improvement in the scores on tests of those skills until Gen Z. What happened with Gen Z? We introduced smartphones, and we introduced smartphones to Gen Z often when they were very young. And so they learned, and they were integrated into schools for many Gen Z kids. And so screens. And when you learn from screens, you're not learning from a human. So you don't have the safety of the human-to-human teaching mentorship of kind of having your hand held through learning stuff, which safety also allocates resources to learning via the vagus nerve. Learning is shut down. Learning new things is almost completely shut down when we're in a stressed state. Wow. That's why it's so hard to remember stuff when you're stressed.
Holy crap.
Because why would you want your body to allocate resources to learning when there could be a saber-toothed tiger around the corner?
Yeah.
It's just that simple. So the body just says, nope, no learning. I just care about fight or flight. There could be a tiger. Even if there's no tiger, if we're overwhelmed, then we default to survival. That's what our nervous system evolved to do. This is, again, hundreds of millions of years old. So that nervous system hardwiring results in us basically, again, being in this chronic fear state that prevents the body from learning and absorbing new information, not just the supplements and food we put into it, but even new information, and making sure that information sticks. And so when we expose kids to learning new information from screens, and screens themselves are producing blue light and fast moving things that are changing often, it's overstimulating to the nervous system.
The Wi-Fi too.
Yeah. And so people, all the stimulation, right? And so people we're expecting kids to learn, but the medium of the screen as the primary learning tool is increasing the stress state in the nervous system, which is antithetical to the system being receptive to learning.
Interesting.
Right? And so now kids are not retaining the information that we're teaching them after we spend hundreds of millions of dollars teaching a generation how to function and think and reason and understand basic math and language skills. They're learning that stuff in school. And then because their body's in a stress state, they're not able to integrate it and maintain that knowledge for the long haul and then actually make it actionable in the real world. So they learn it. We lose most of it and forget it because it's memorized, it's not understood, and it doesn't stick. And then we move on to the next thing, and we graduate from all of the schooling, and we don't actually retain the functionality that schooling was aimed to bestow upon us. And so we feel a lot more unprepared for life because we spend most of our time learning in a neurologically unideal stress state. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So the teachers that said no phones in class were actually right.
For sure.
Everyone hated those teachers.
And ideally no screens, right? Or minimal screens. Learn on the computer for an hour a day, not for 4 hours a day. Right? That's a huge difference. And I think just the other part of that I think is really important to talk about is the fact that Gen Z is the first generation in human recorded history that has scored lower on these standardized cognitive measures of reasoning and math and language is the first sign that we have seen as a real objective empirical sign that we are a society in regression. We have never seen a current generation perform worse on these measures than a previous generation.
Wow.
We need to fix that.
Yeah, that's scary.
Right? That is a major problem, and we need to correct and go back to prioritizing human-to-human learning rather than screen-to-human learning because it's not working.
Yeah. Well, now a lot of kids are learning on AI screens, on their computer, so you probably don't like that, right?
I mean, it's not about like or dislike. It's just about what works, right? If we're going to invest a bunch of money as a society into an education system, which is our tax dollars, this isn't just money that appears, right? We bust our butts to then pay taxes, and then those taxes go to fund schools.
Right.
And if those schools are supposed to be teaching our children who are going to be taking care of us when we're old and dying, right? And running society when we're old, then we want those kids to have some skills that they remember how to use. We want them to have some reasoning and some knowledge. And hopefully our tax dollars went to good use, just like with absorbing your supplements, right? You pay a whole bunch of money for supplements. You don't want them to mostly be excreted as waste.
For sure.
You want this stuff to get into the body. Same with learning and knowledge. So we just spend hundreds of millions of dollars a year as a society, and maybe $1 billion on education every year of a new generation. We need to make sure that education is working. And if it's not working and sticking, then we're going to have we're literally training a bunch of new adults to be unprepared for life because we're not giving them the skills they need to learn in a way that they can receive and integrate them into practice.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah, I don't have too much faith in the public education system at the moment, but hopefully they could turn things around.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm looking into private. I don't even have kids yet, but if I were to send them, looking into private or something actionable.
I mean, I think honestly, they're both at risk. And I think when you think about where you're sending your kids to school or how they're being educated, most of the importance is not even public or private. It's how much teacher student time do they get? How much screen time are they going to be given in school? Right? Because that increase in screen time seems to be the major thing that is correlated with this poor performance and poor learning.
Guys, I've been checking out this company called The Light System, and it's one of the more interesting wellness technologies I've seen in a while. They combine light, frequency, color therapy, and biometric optimization into products designed to support energy, recovery, focus, and overall balance. What I like is they're thinking beyond basic wellness gadgets. This is more about creating an environment that helps your body perform at a higher level naturally. They've also got a new product called The Watch, which combines smartwatch tracking with their proprietary frequency technology directly on your wrist. Definitely futuristic stuff. If you want to learn more, check out The Light Systems online and see what they're building.
Yeah, because it also affects attention, right?
Everything. Yeah, everything.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people struggle with attention these days, like staying locked in. Like
Right.
I remember we had to take the SATs 4-hour test. I don't know if kids can do that. I hear they keep shortening it.
Yeah.
They don't have the essay anymore.
Yeah, no, they changed a lot of it.
Yeah.
It's like, people aren't scoring as well in the old way, so we're going to change the way we measure them rather than fix the
Right. They make
fix
it
the
easier and
teaching.
easier.
Yeah, it doesn't really make sense. Like, you can't just keep changing the goalposts, right? The goalposts should stay the same or increase.
I think
over
it should
time.
get harder over time, yeah.
Exactly, right? If we're supposed to be on a trend of getting smarter over time and increasing our educational system's quality and how well we teach and learn, then by understanding the science of learning, which has been well understood, right? Like, Eric Kandel won the Nobel Prize in 2000. That means his work on this was completed at least 20 years before. And it's 2026. It's 26 years after he won the Nobel Prize. And we still haven't figured out how to take what we proclaimed was one of the world's greatest discoveries ever about how learning and memory works and put it into practice. We're still that far behind.
Wow.
Right? So that's the part that really needs to be fixed and that's why I wrote this book is to make it easier to understand what we can learn from these tremendous discoveries in science and then how to translate them into practice, starting with education in the school system, and just be better at optimizing the state of the body for what we're asking people to do, right? If we want people to learn to concentrate, we have to teach them how to focus for extended periods of time. You can't just throw people into a room and say, concentrate on this thing that really bores you without teaching them how to do it. That's silly, right? So attention is a huge part of that because attention is our most important skill, which is also one of the major topics of the book that we don't teach properly. And it's a muscle. So by learning to train your attention, you're not born with a certain amount of attention. Attention is like something you can grow over time, and attention control is a muscle that we can body build over time.
Right.
And so the more that we train attention control by noticing where our attention is and then simply redirecting it back to our goal, then every time we notice where our attention has wandered and redirected back, which is basic mindfulness, all of a sudden we do a rep. That's a rep. That's like a bicep rep, right? My attention has wandered. Oh, let's bring it back to the goal, right? You've just done a rep. And now you're increasing the strength of the wiring of your attention muscle, which makes it easier to focus next time. But we're not asking people to do that. We're not teaching that properly at all. And we're just saying, here, take this screen. When you notice your attention's wandered, just swipe, just scroll.
Doom scrolling.
Yeah, that is not the solution. That is distraction from learning attention control. Right. So we have to get back to remembering that attention is our chief muscle, and it is that we should be training our whole lives. And it is actually it's like the gateway of our consciousness. So anything that we give our attention to is allowed to come into us, and it becomes part of us. So where we put our attention couldn't be more important.
Yeah.
And that dictates everything that follows.
Yeah, Jim Quick actually says we're in an attention economy now, not intelligence economy.
Yeah.
That's how important it's become.
Absolutely.
Crazy.
Yeah, and I talk about that in the book, in the dopamine economy chapter, about how we have created capitalism has incentivized in many ways perversely a attention economy state where our attention has become something that has a price value on it, that corporations have a reason to buy and advertise for, and that's the commodity, right?
100%. Yeah, I've seen, I don't know if this is true, but our attention span is shorter than a goldfish now. Have you seen that?
I don't know if it's shorter than a goldfish, but it's very short,
Yeah.
right? It's like probably the average person's attention span is like 6 to 12 seconds before they wander,
That's nuts.
right? So, but the good news is all it takes is noticing when your attention's wandered and bringing it back to the goal. And every time you do that, you're strengthening your attention. Every time you let your attention wander and swipe or scroll or distract yourself and not come back to the goal, then your muscle starts to fatigue and become weak. Your attention muscle weakens, right? So we just want to make sure that we're intentional about how we use our attention, and realizing how important this muscle really is, because as we train it, we can actually start to understand how to take more control over our lives. We can start to understand how to optimize healing, optimize recovery, and just feel better generally day to day, because attention control allows us to filter incoming information. So when you're overwhelmed, when you're stressed, when you feel like you have a million things going on that seem out of your control and you don't know what to do, that's the time your attention muscle comes in, and you can be like, wow, I can self-regulate anxiety, right? I can make my mood better at will. I can improve my energy at will. Those are all human abilities we're born with the ability to do. Why we haven't taught them to people
That's a whole
beats
nother.
me, right? But I think that's why now that we know that Western science explains these attention training techniques that have been thousands of years old from Eastern and tribal medicine, this must be integrated into education. And it doesn't you don't have to be taught this in school. You can learn it any time, but just by realizing that it exists. But but it needs to be integrated into schools, because it's so much easier to teach kids how to do this when they're young than to teach them to distract or numb themselves to stress.
Yeah. Yeah, when I'm working at home, I have to put my phone in another room, because otherwise I'm picking it up every 2 minutes.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I just can't control it.
I have to keep my phone on Do Not Disturb with the face
all
down
day. Yeah,
And
I'm
then-
on D&D all day.
And that's a really simple way to start to regulate, right? People often think, oh, it's gonna be so hard. It's not that hard. It's just about being intentional. So just by putting your smartphone into Do Not Disturb mode as one example, then rather than the phone's vibration or ringing steering our attention, we decide when we want to look at it, right? And if we're deciding when we want to look at it, then we can say, oh, I'm gonna check it once an hour. I'm not gonna look at it every time it bangs or dings. And so then, rather than the phone controlling our attention and where it is at any given time with its notifications, we choose. That's a huge difference.
Yeah.
Right? You choosing is your exercising free will and your attention muscle.
Absolutely. Let's end off with trauma and psychedelics. So people throw around this term generational trauma. I'm sure you've heard it all the time. Is that actually possible to have trauma inherited from your parents or grandparents?
Yeah, so the studies show in humans that we have evidence that trauma passes down through the epigenetic code, which is the code on top of the DNA that regulates stress response genes and regulates the way our cells function. And that can get passed down in humans, we've seen, for 3 or more generations.
Wow.
And in animals, we've seen it passed down for up to 14 generations.
Dang.
So when you think about trauma in a modern neuroscience sense, we should not be thinking about it on just the basis of what I've experienced in my life, which is often enough, but our bodies store information about meaning that our parents and our grandparents and beyond have experienced in their own lives. So one of the best examples of this is that in our ancestors who experienced famine or food austerity, like for extended periods of time, that their bodies, realizing that there wasn't as much food around, this is our ancestors, so multiple generations back, when they experienced food austerity or famine for extended periods, their bodies said, there might not be enough food around. Right. So for me and for future generations, I'm going to change the epigenetic code to remember there might not be food around, and I'm going to decrease metabolic rate. So that is an adaptive epigenetic stress response that's really important in times where there's not enough food around for extended periods. Now, go, and that gets passed down to multiple generations, because if our grandparents had trouble getting enough food for extended periods, then in the past that would be likely to also impact their children and their children's children. So they pass down the epigenetic code that is marked on the metabolic genes that say decrease the speed of metabolism, store more nutrients, keep it for longer, make the nutrients last longer. When we are now in a phase of food surplus, so the same people that inherited these gene changes around slowing metabolism in times of famine are now have endless food anytime you want, healthy or unhealthy. It's all available all the time. The same genes, gene changes are still existing in those people that are decreasing metabolic speed and rate. So they are more likely to develop obesity, metabolic disorder, type 2 diabetes, all of those kinds of issues, because their metabolic system is not prepared for food surplus. It's prepared for famine. Right. So they're in a conservation state where they're not burning off as much of the food, because they're the first generation to experience food surplus, right? Coming from famine. So that is a way that trauma gets passed down over time. And that actually exists with mental and emotional trauma as well.
Interesting.
And that was discovered about 20 or 30 years ago in some really groundbreaking work by Dr. Rachel Yehuda. I also go into great detail about this in the book, because I think it's one of the most interesting discoveries of the last 20, 30 years in neuroscience. And that what's really exciting is that we now know we can actually fix it. So thanks to psychedelic assisted therapy, we've been working with people with severe PTSD, with MAPS and other researchers, and we published a paper in 2021 in Frontiers in Psychiatry, which is the first study looking at the epigenetic shifts on cortisol receptors, so one of the major stress response genes, before and after MDMA-assisted therapy in people with severe PTSD who are known to have trauma-induced changes to their cortisol receptor gene. And when we looked at those people, we were able to see that when people go through just 3 doses of MDMA-assisted therapy and over 12 weeks in the MAPS protocol, so 42 hours of therapy over 12 weeks, but it's a condensed period. It's not medicine for life. That's all the treatment they're doing. That within just 12 weeks, we see statistically significant remodeling of the epigenetic changes on the cortisol receptor to look more like they were in a pre-traumatized state.
Wow.
And the symptoms correlate with that. So as we see more epigenetic remodeling, more effectively repair of the damage that trauma did to the cortisol receptor, we now can see that that can be remodeled and repaired over time. So the memory of trauma that's stored not just in our neurons, but also all the way down to our epigenetic code can actually be shifted. And that's where the core memories of trauma seem to be stored. That's where it gets passed down. We don't just need to relearn stuff superficially.
Right.
Oh, I'm safe. Okay, great. What's stored in your DNA, on your DNA, right? What does that remember?
Yeah.
And that seems to be what really matters. And when we start to, and this was a really exciting study, because it was the first time in this field that we understood that we can use tools like psychedelic assisted therapy to actually reverse trauma memory recorded on the DNA. Trauma was never known to be really like reversible before on the level of the memory stored in the cells. We knew it was repairable on a symptom level from the early MDMA and psychedelic work, but we didn't know that you could actually rewrite the epigenetic memory. So that is really cool, because that shows us that when you heal yourself and we heal our own trauma in our generation, we can actually shift the likelihood of passing those trauma changes on to the next generation, right? So healing yourself really does matter, because we prevent the passing down of those same pathological shifts onto the next generation. We stop the cycle.
That's massive.
Of intergenerational trauma, right? We can stop it in our generation. Like, how incredible is that?
That's crazy. So there's a possibility our grandkids will have way less trauma than us.
Hopefully, yeah. That's
Right.
the goal. That's the dream.
Because I know
right?
Trump's trying to legalize it right now, Rogan.
Yeah.
So if that happens, that'd be massive.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a major thing that that the federal government has passed that written that executive order, because hopefully they actually follow through with it. But the scheduling of the psychedelic medicines as DEA Schedule 1 from the 1970 Controlled Substances Act with Richard Nixon is the single reason why there's been almost like no to minimal psychedelic research controlled in the US over the last 50 years.
Right.
And so the rescheduling of these medicines allows the scientific community an opportunity to now have access to these as research tools, and then start to actually develop the training protocols and the treatment plans, and work with doctors to be able to start to create and understand how to deliver these at scale to an entire community of tens of millions of people nationwide that are struggling with severe mental illness. We now have the ability, as the DEA reschedules this, to start to get this into these people's hands.
Yeah.
And we haven't had that. And now Australia's already ahead of us. Tanya Jajong in Australia has taken, her team already reviewed all the same studies that we reviewed here, most of which were done in the United States. I was just on a panel with her yesterday here. And it's very exciting because she was able to show those studies to the Australian government, and their scientists reviewed it, and they're like, "Oh, this data is really good," and it is good. The U.S. government, the FDA, was just like so confused and given a ton of propaganda about these medicines, and they were not looking at it from an unbiased perspective. The Australian government just looked at this data and they're like, "Oh, these are really good studies," and they are. And when they actually look at them objectively, they said, "We need to integrate this into our mental health system immediately."
Amazing.
And they've already trained 700 therapists and treated over 1,000 patients.
Wow.
With newly trained therapists in the Australian ecosystem with psilocybin and MDMA.
Amazing.
And we still only have ketamine here in the US. And ketamine's great, but we need to have more access to more of these tools in the toolbox for mental health, and we need more people trained to be able to deliver them, because again, there's like easily 40 to 100 million people in the United States that could benefit from these treatments that are currently not able to get them.
I hope we could get there. I never met a hippie that was a mean person. You know what I mean? They're just all positive. The boomers were onto something.
I've met some mean hippies.
Really? Wow, that's surprising. Whenever I meet them, they're like smiling and
laughing.
I
get what you're saying. Yeah. No, most of them are pretty laid back.
Yeah, for sure. Well, how can people watching this get some Apollo, get more interested in what you're doing, get the book and all that? Where can people find you?
You can find me at apollo.clinic, which is my personal professional website. Also, drdave.io, on socials at Dr. David Rabin. And you can find the book at asimpleguidetobeingalive.com. And you can find Apollo at apolloneuro.com. If you have a iPhone, we have a special free version, of a light version of the app where after we start to see these incredible clinical trials results come in, we've had now 17 completed clinical trials of Apollo. It's the most studied wearable technology, and across over 2,000 research subjects. And so my wife and I run Apollo as like a mom and pop shop, and we created it to create technology that heals humanity, because most of our technology unfortunately makes us sicker.
Right.
And so we released last year a very special free version of Apollo that we spent 3 years hacking the iPhone to use the haptic engine to deliver Apollo's clinically proven bass vibrations through the iPhone haptic engine. So now you can download Apollo Neuro on your iPhone, the app, and the wearable works with Android and iPhone. But we have a special app for iPhone now that is free. So anyone can turn their iPhone into a device that can send signals to your body that within minutes increase your vagus nerve activity, increase your heart rate variability, and actually help to heal the body. Your iPhone can now heal you.
Never thought I'd hear that.
For free, right? Think about that kind of technological invention, that we can use technology to heal us. We can use the same technology that's in our pockets to start to nudge the body into states that favor and promote healing. We've just chosen not to use it for that. So we created the first example of this. We made it free so everyone could try it, and now it's shareable. So you can finally, for the first time, share good vibes via your iPhone with anybody else who has an iPhone for free. And these vibration patterns actually heal your body. It's the first nervous system, science-based nervous system neuroscience upgrade for your iPhone that's
Nice.
available to everyone.
Cool.
So Apollo Neuro app in the App Store. Check it out and get on the good vibes.
Awesome. Check out the links, guys. See ya.
Thanks for watching all the way to the end, guys. It means a lot. Please click here if you want to watch the next episode, and please subscribe to the show. It helps us get more guests and helps grow the brand.